恭敬大德善听，为此法会，济一切众生，经传妙法轮，教导我们如何疗伤脱死离苦得乐。速战无声。Will the Sangha with great virtue out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn
I think we just lost Ron. Um, I'm going to continue on your behalf, Ron. Please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to live suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth. Before I continue, I just want to make sure everyone can hear me.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, great, Ron. We can hear you now. I've continued on your behalf, and then you can. We are done with the Dharma request. Thanks, Ron. Okay, I'm going to recite the Buddha's name. But can people hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati san miao san puto che. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa. Bai qian wan jie nan sao yi. Wo jin jian wen de shou che. Yan jie ru lai zhen shu yi. Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in the billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, welcome to uh, today's class 41. Yes, today is class 41 of our exploration of the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra. Today we are going to go into, we've explored how to give, who to give to, let me see, how to give, who to give to, why we give. Today we're going to go into what can we give. Yeah, if there's time we can go into the, okay, wait, that'll be for next week. For now, let's recite the Buddha's name 7 times. Then we can move on to today's session. Namo, quelling disasters, lending life, medicine master, Buddha. 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 Namo, quelling quelling disasters, lending life. Medicine Master Buddha Namo, quelling disasters, lending life. Medicine Master Buddha, Medicine Master does come one. 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 Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We have a question. Do we have Vietnamese translation? No. We tried, but the people at Berkeley who were doing the Vietnamese translation, they have too many things to do and probably not enough Vietnamese listeners. So I think they tried it once or twice and they decided not to do it. But if there are enough people who want Vietnamese who or require Vietnamese translation, I know there are some people in Berkeley who have told me that they prefer to listen in Vietnamese as well. Let them know. Let the people who do the Vietnamese translation know. Maybe they can recruit more people, or they can maybe try to do something about it. Yeah. So sorry for now. There's no Vietnamese translation. Okay, let me find today's slide. Okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, today we're continuing on giving and generosity. We've talked about why we want to give, who to give to. We talked about the benefits to be gained from giving and the wealth that we receive in return. Last week we explored how to give. So you want to create merit and not just blessings. Today we are going to look into what can be given. Okay, what can be given. All right, so I'm going to start by using uh, it's called a treatise. There's a monk in the 6th century called Acharya Dhammapala, and he compiled something called a treatise on the perfection of the paramitas. So this is an excerpt. So that's why my title on the slide is called On the Perfection of Giving. What he did is very, very interesting because this is one of the very few works that's in the Pali Canon that has very, very strong influences from the Mahayana. So usually the Pali Canon does not have much instruction for people who want to become bodhisattvas. They contain a lot of instruction for arhats and for people who want to end birth and death, but their aim is to save themselves. So for arhats or sound hearers and pracheka Buddhas, this is the one of very, very few. I'm not sure I know of any more. I know there are, but I don't have them right now. Um, in the Pali Canon, which actually outlines uh, the Bodhisattva path um, through the 10 paramitas. Yeah. So so my intention in exploring the whole concept of giving was to, if you realize most of the material that I have shared so far comes from the Pali Canon, and because the Pali Canon is a lot more relevant to our conditions for all of us. Maybe not for everyone. I can't speak for everyone, but at least for myself, the Pali Canon provides me with a better understanding of the whole concept of giving. And then I thought I would wrap up giving probably next week by looking at how a bodhisattva gives, because how a bodhisattva gives is very inspirational. So right now we are transitioning from most of the text from the Pali Canon into the Mahayana. So in Acharya Dhammapala, he's a very famous commentator, or That means he shastras. His books are called shastras. He comments on the sutras. So he says there are three things that you can give within the Dharma. You categorize them as number one, the giving of material objects, and then number two, the giving of fearlessness, and number three, the giving of Dharma. Okay. And in terms of the giving of material objects, it says you can further classify them into external and internal. Then he further classify. It's very interesting. Not very useful. I guess it can be useful, but it's very interesting because from here he classifies it further into groupings through the senses. That means things you can see with the eyes, things you can hear with the ear. But we're not going to go into so much detail because it becomes really academic. But what are external objects that you can give? Well, you can give things like things you can eat, food, things that you can drink, clothing, vehicles, garlands, scents. Those are things that you can use to adorn, to make someone look nice. Bathing, dwellings, lamps to provide light. Bear in mind that when he wrote this, it was during the 6th century. So we have to be able to understand the principle of what he's saying and um, translate that into a modern context that makes sense for us. For example, he talks about valuables like and belongings like gems, gold, silver, pearls, coral, and then he talks about property like fields, lands, parks. Then he talks about slaves that doesn't really apply in the modern world anymore, although it's still a problem. Then he talks about like cows and buffaloes. For us in this um, in modern times, that you could probably substitute any of those with stock certificates. If you are keeping up with finance, it would be something to do with cryptocurrency, like maybe Bitcoin. uh, so he says when you give something external, you give things that are appropriate for householders and things that are appropriate. What is appropriate for left home people, you give it to them. What is appropriate for householders, you give it to them. So don't give like pearls or jewelry to left home people. You give the four requisites, and then for householders, you can give anything that's appropriate, useful, and timely. Okay, then he also talks about internal objects, which is very interesting. He says, what are internal objects? He says internal you means the body, what you have, what you uh, yeah, the body. So he says you can surrender to another person and become their he says enter into servitude, meaning you serve them. That's one way. You anything to do with your organs or your limbs, meaning your hands, your feet, your eyes, you can give them away. It says without trembling and without covering. So the context for this is he's talking about bodhisattvas, but we can use the principle and apply it to us. And then he says that someone who is able to give away like this, gives without trembling and without covering, that means there's no fear. Imagine being able to give part of your body without fear. And then he says that such a person is no more attached to them and no more and doesn't shrink away from giving. There's no trepidation from giving, as if this they give away the internal objects as if these internal objects were seen as external. That means they are not attached to how they give. They don't view it as I'm giving away something that's mine, that's precious. There is recognition that it's precious, but there's no attachment. The preciousness does not create an attachment to the object. Okay, so how do we um, make sense of this? Well, we can look at it as when he talks about servitude, I look at it as people who volunteer their time and their effort. We have a lot of people who come to the monastery to help clean the monastery, to help with the food, to cook, to do a lot of things that the monastery requires to function. So that would um, that will totally classify as an internal act of generosity. If you want to get more literal, you can donate your blood, and then some people donate one of their kidneys. Things that you are physically able to give, you can. So that will classify as an internal act of giving. And one of my favorite stories about truly, how you say, heroic act. Okay, so on the bodhisattva part of giving, one of the most heroic things that you can do is you give up your body, your entire body. That means your life. The context for this is that the bodhisattva sees the opportunity. The bodhisattva doesn't view their perspective on their life and their body is very, very different from ours. Their view is extremely long term. They see the body only as a temporary thing. You know, it is going to the body is going to grow old and decay. And they say that if you don't give the body away, then the body is going to go to waste. It's like food. If you have too much food, and if you don't share the food, then that food is going to go to waste because no one's going to eat it. It's going to spoil. Then why waste the food? That's kind of how they see it. So it's a very different way of seeing of us and our relationship with our bodies, for example. So it might be a bit difficult to understand. So there's this story, and I have a picture. Do you all know the story of how the rabbit in the moon? I believe I've told this before, but I don't remember if I've told it here. Okay, give me a moment. Let me look up. I know I have the picture somewhere. Okay, so the story of the rabbit in the moon. Okay, got it. Okay, if you look at your screen, do you see the rabbit in the moon? No? Okay, let me, there. Do you see it now? Okay, so where does this story come from? Well, the Buddha told this story himself. A long time ago, the Buddha was born as a rabbit, and this rabbit could speak. Yeah, it's one of those times when even animals had wisdom. In fact, more wisdom than human beings right now. So this rabbit could speak, and not only could he speak, he knew that the next day was going to be. I think it was like how we have the first and the 15th lunar day of the month. He knew it was an auspicious day, so he told his friends. He said, "Oh, tomorrow is going to be an auspicious day, and we should prepare offerings in case a mendicant comes along and we have a chance to make offerings." So his friends were an otter and let me see, an otter, I think a monkey. Yeah, and maybe something else. I didn't prepare this story, but to cut a long story short, because it is a pretty long story. Um, when the rabbit, was eating grass. That's what a rabbit does. A rabbit eats grass, and then when he was eating the grass, he realized that he said, "Oh, all I have to offer, if someone were to come along, if a mendicant were to come along, mendicant meaning like someone who contemplates. So I guess it's a monk, okay, maybe Buddhist monk. So if someone comes along and I have an opportunity to give alms, he said it won't be fitting it won't be appropriate. We've talked about what is an appropriate gift. So it won't be appropriate for me to give this grass to a human being because they won't be able to eat it. So he made a resolve. He said, then it will be, he said, why don't I offer my body instead for the mendicant to eat my body? Then I will be able to create a great merit. So when he made this vow, they said that in the heavens, the throne of Lord Chakra began to grow hot. And Lord Chakra was wondering, what's going on? Why is my throne suddenly warm? So he decided to investigate, and he found out that the rabbit had made this vow. So what Lord Chakra did was he transformed himself into a mendicant. He came down to earth, and he visited the rabbit. First, he visited the rabbit's friends. Then finally, he visited the rabbit, and then the rabbit told him, said, "Oh, today is a great day for me because I'm able to make an offering to you. But if you uh, can you help me make a fire? Because as a rabbit, hands, they don't have like fingers and thumbs. They can't make a fire. So he asked the mendicant to make a fire, and he told the mendicant, I'll jump into the fire, and after that you can eat my body when it's cooked. So the mendicant made a fire, but because he was Lord Chakra, he made this magic fire that looked like fire, but it wasn't hot. But the rabbit didn't know any of this. So when the fire was ready, the rabbit jumped into the fire with a joyful cry. It means he was really happy. And because he knew that by doing this, his reward was going to be really great. So he jumped into the fire. Then he realized, what's going on? He said, why do I feel cool and comfortable instead of, you know, uh, feeling the effects of fire burning me? And then Lord Chakra transformed himself into back from the appearance of a mendicant into his resplendent form. And he said, he praised the rabbit, and he said that your selfless act would be remembered for 3 kalpas, something like that. So this part I can't really imagine in my mind because it's a bit mind-boggling. But it is said that Lord Shaka then stretched out his hand. He stretched out his hand. He took a mountain and he squeezed the essence of the mountain. And with the essence of the mountain, he painted the picture of the rabbit on the moon, so everyone could see the rabbit and be reminded of the rabbit's virtuous act. Yeah, so that's one example of bodhisattva giving, like really great internal giving. So it is said that when someone gives like that, all they wish for is the supreme welfare and happiness of all beings. And then at the same time, they also desire to fulfill their own perfection of giving. And their mind is just for the path. It's a spiritually oriented mind. It's not a selfish mind. And they do it for the sake of enlightenment. So they do it because they want others to be able to enjoy according to their pleasures, and for their own self mastery of the path. So his aim is he thinks that how you say, his intention is that I am closer to enlightenment, or I want to attain enlightenment through this non-attachment act of giving. And also he gives with wisdom, he gives appropriately, so he doesn't give to Mara or any of Mara's followers. He's able to recognize when the person asking is not sincere. He's able to see that, and he says that he doesn't give to Mara, his followers, or his deities, or to people who are mad. Yeah, so that's the the giving of external and internal objects. Okay, what's the second giving of fearlessness? Okay, according to Acharya Dhammapala, it says the giving of fearlessness. Oh, excuse me. It says the giving of fearlessness is the giving of protection to beings when they have become frightened on account of kings, thieves, fire, water, enemies, lions, tigers, other wild beasts, dragons. How do you pronounce that one? Ogres, demons, goblins, etc. So that's very straightforward, right? You help people out when they are in trouble. That's one way of looking at it. But in our case, how do we actually do that? Okay, just give me one moment. Okay, let me stop sharing this slideshow because I need to get my notes from one of the slides which I put in the wrong place. Okay, bear with me for a minute or two. Okay. Control copy. So Ron has typed in the chat box. He apologizes for his microphone that stopped working. No problem, Ron. Yeah, these things happen. Zoom has caused a lot of people. It has created a lot of good things, but also made a lot of given a lot of people issues with the computers. Okay, let's continue. Sorry about that. Uh, Giving of fearlessness. Okay, so what's giving of fearlessness? For that, I have this thing. It's called the 5 thoughtless gifts. How can we make giving of fearlessness relevant to us? So the Buddha says, this is a sutta, the Buddha says there are these 5 gifts, 5 great gifts, original, long-standing, traditional, ancient, unadulterated, unadulterated from the beginning, that are not open to suspicion, will never be open to suspicion, and are unfaulted by knowledgeable contemplatives and Brahmins. Which 5? Okay, who wants to guess? What are these? Anyone? I mean, the Buddha made a really good case. I mean, just check out how he describes this: original, long-standing, traditional, ancient, unadulterated, not open to suspicion. You can't get a better endorsement than that. Anyone? Okay, in case there's anyone who wants to guess, let me answer Hilda's question. It said, Lord Chakra does not give to those who are mad. You mean angry? Yes, Hilda. Hilda, no. The text doesn't mean angry. It means people who are not of sound mind. At least that's what I think it means. Okay, did someone say wisdom? I spoke over someone just now. Okay. Dharma. Okay, Tan says Dharma. I think I heard something like wisdom. Wisdom. Okay, is that Randy? Okay, let's find out what are these 5 faultless gifts. Okay, hold on to your thoughts. Says there is the case where a disciple of the noble ones, abandoning the taking of life, abstains from taking life. In doing so, he gives freedom from danger, freedom from animosity, freedom from oppression to limitless number of beings. What does that sound like? Okay. It says in giving freedom from danger, freedom from animosity, freedom from oppression to limitless numbers of beings, he gains a share in limitless freedom from danger. That means what you give out, you get in return. It says the Buddha says this is the first great gift. So Uen says, "Oh, is this the 5 precepts?" Yes, you got it. 5 precepts. So what's next? Okay, abandoning taking what is not given. So if you do not steal, then the effect that you have on people around you is that you are giving them freedom from, they don't feel that there's any danger from you. They don't, there's no animosity. They don't feel oppressed. And the trend continues in the way the Buddha explained. He says, when you give this kind of freedom to people, then that's the same measure of freedom that you get back. So this is the second gift. So the third one is in the text, it's translated as illicit sex. We usually say it as sexual misconduct. Illicit sex sounds a bit better, I think. So this is number 3. Number 4, lying. And number 5, the use of intoxicants. So isn't this such a inspiring perspective of the precepts? Because I remember when I took the precepts, and after that, being able to participate in quite a few explanations of the precepts, listening to how people would explain the precepts. It's always explained from a very rigid way, as in this is how you break the precepts. First, they give you, they talk about what are the requisites for knowing if you have broken the precepts, number one, and then they talk about what happens when you break the precepts, all the hells that you go to. What else? And it's always very the view of the precepts is that you hold it for yourself, or at least that's the takeaway. That's my memory of. I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. That's the memory that I have. JinHe, intoxicants is anything that makes you confused, the mind confused. So anything like drugs or alcohol, uh, that's considered intoxicants. Smoking is also, cigarettes is also considered an intoxicant under the five precepts. So my experience of the precepts is always the stick part. You know, I think the Chinese are motivated by fear. Fear is a great motivator, and it's very useful. But sometimes you also, I think not sometimes, all the time, you also need to balance out the stick with the carrot. And what is the carrot from the Dharma? The carrot is the inspiring part. It's the part that touches the heart. It's the part that helps you explain why you are practicing the Dharma to people who don't understand what Buddhism is all about. It's the part that a college student who wants to hold the five precepts can do it confidently and with their friends. And if they are asked, they can give an answer that doesn't make them look weird, that actually makes other people embarrassed for their conduct instead, because they understand that, oh, this person is behaving based on goodwill, based on virtue, based on concern and care, not for himself or herself, but for the people around them. So that's the carrot part of the stick. Yeah. So that's why I think that sometimes I see people, the longer they practice, the I think the what's the right word? The more rigid they become. Yeah, they become a lot tighter, like literally as well. The body seems to be more tight instead of loose and relaxed and patient and more confident. So instead of becoming happier, more confident and progressing, they it's almost like they become worse. They become more uptight, less patient. Uh, yeah. Um, so the stick part, the carrot part, we have had enough of stick. If you are familiar with Chinese Buddhism, I'm sure everyone knows all the stick explanations of the precepts, so I'm not going to go there. The carrot part is all about holding precepts on behalf of living beings. Um, so with the correct attitude, yeah, you are able to give fearlessness, you are able to give love and benevolence to all beings. You're able to give them security and freedom from fear. From who? From yourself. That means when they are around you, they feel really comfortable. They don't even have to think about it. It's just, you know, it's just, they just feel relaxed and comfortable around you. And it is said that this is one of the highest form of giving that someone can give. So it's fairly indirect in terms of your, it's indirect, but in terms of your intention, is very direct. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I mean by the inspiring part, the carrot part. We've talked about holding the looking at holding precepts as how you treat people you care. When you have people that you care, the precepts arise naturally. They so people that you care about bring out the best in you, which is you another way of talking about the precepts. So that's also a very inspiring way of looking at precepts. So okay, there's a question to go back to slide on the fourth precept. Okay, let me. Is this the one? Lying. So the text is all the same. It's only the first few words that are different. The the a lot of the suttas are in repeated form because I think it helps in for someone to be able to memorize. So the keywords are freedom from danger, freedom from animosity, freedom from oppression, and in return, you gain a share. Likewise, in how you treat people will end up in the same way of how people treat you. Okay, all right. Melinda says the longer the practice, the body becomes more rigid because they caution cause and effect. Yeah, they use instead of looking at the precepts or the dharma as how the Buddha actually taught it. Uh, Sometimes we take a small part or a small section of understanding and we just use that as the complete understanding of the practice, and not ignore, but maybe not aware of the other different ways, more useful ways that the Dharma can be explained. Okay, so there's one thing about giving of fearlessness. Um, in There's another shastra called the Six Perfections. It's a shastra by the Venerable Nagarjuna. Uh, I don't have the date when he was around, but I believe it's the same monk who went to the dragon palace in the sea to bring back the and sneak back uh, the Avatamsaka Sutra so that we have it now. So he's not like an ordinary monk. So in his treatise or Shastra commentary on the six perfections, he doesn't talk about giving of fearlessness. Instead, he lists it as the giving of reverence. What is the giving of reverence? He says it's having a mind of faith, which is pure as one reverently performs acts of obeisance. It refers to offerings which consist of looking after, seeing off, welcoming, making expressions of praise, and circumambulating. All sorts of actions such as this constitute what is referred to as the giving of reverence. What is this? This is what you do when you come to the monastery or when you see a stupa, you circumambulate, you make praises to the Buddha. Uh, it also includes giving of Dharma. And so in his interpretation of the three givings, number three is giving of Dharma. We haven't gotten there yet. So number one, he lists down as giving of material objects, same as what we just gone through. But instead of giving of fearlessness, he talks about the giving of praise and practice. So this is praise and practice. So this reminded me of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's 10 conducts and vows. First is to worship and respect all Buddhas, which is what we just it's not on screen, but what you just heard me read. So first is to worship and respect all Buddhas. Second is to make praises to the dust come ones. And third is to practice profoundly the giving of offerings. So you can see that the first three of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's 10 conducts and vows has to do with giving. And there's 10. There's more of them that has to do with giving. But if you're interested, you have to do the homework yourself. Okay, go look up. If you haven't memorized it yet, because we recite it every morning in our morning ceremony, go look up Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's 10 Conducts and Vows. You can find it in the Avatamsaka Sutra or in the CDTB website, and go figure out for yourself how many of his vows are related to giving. Okay, and also we should have enough time. Later, I have a story about praising the Buddha and its effects. Okay, all right, let's move on. We've already gone through that. Now I have a short sutta. of the giving of Dharma, and someone is asking the Buddha, it says, a giver of what is a giver of strength? Meaning, what do you give that you considers you're giving strength? What do you give? Okay, a giver of what? A giver of beauty, a giver of what is a giver of ease, a giver of what is a giver of vision, a giver, and who is a giver of everything? Being asked, please explain this to me. So this person is asking the Buddha. Okay. Question is a bit direct, right? The language. Okay. So the Buddha replies, he says, a giver of food is a giver of strength. A giver of clothes is a giver of beauty. A giver of a vehicle, a giver of ease. That means you allow people to move around easily. A giver of a lamp, a giver of vision. And the one who gives a residence is the one who's a giver of everything. But the one who teaches the Dharma is a giver of the deathless, meaning the supreme giving is the giving of Dharma. And then there's another sutta by the Buddha, also called the Gift of Dharma is Supreme. Here the Buddha says, there are these two kinds of gifts, a gift of material things and a gift of the Dharma. Of the two, this is supreme, a gift of the Dharma. So the Buddha goes on to say two kinds of sharing. Of the two, the most supreme is sharing of the Dharma. Number three, there are two kinds of assistance. Of the two, guess which is most supreme? Help with the Dharma. All right. Then the Buddha continues with a verse. He says, the gift he describes as foremost as and unsurpassed, meaning the Dharma, the sharing the blessing one has extolled, who, confident in the supreme field of merit, wise, discerning, wouldn't give it at appropriate times. But for those who proclaim it and those who listen, confident in the message of the one well gone, meaning the Buddha, it purifies their foremost benefit, those heeding the message of the one well gone, meaning you put into practice the Dharma that you get from the Buddha or from anyone who shares Dharma. Okay, next slide. We've come back to Acharya Dhammapala's treatise. He says, to discourse on the Dharma, you have to do it with an undefiled mind. That means what's an undefiled mind? Well, I would describe it as number one, you're sincere. That means when you're sharing the Dharma, you're not thinking about other things like what you want to eat or what you're going to do after you share. You are only concentrating on what you're saying or your intent. That's number one. Number two, your intention is pure. You're not doing it for fame, profit, for praise or whatever it is. Your only reason that you're doing it is that you want it to be beneficial to people. So that's one way to interpret undefiled mind. Excuse me while I take a drink. Okay, number two, he says, what is discourse on the Dharma with the undefiled mind? He says, methodical instruction conducive to good in the present life, in the life to come, and to ultimate deliverance, to cause those who have not entered the Buddha's teachings to enter it, while those who have entered it to reach maturity. And this includes activities such as discoursing, dialectical discussion, reciting, reading, lecturing, dispelling doubts, answering questions, transmitting the 5 precepts to people, and all sorts of other acts of giving such as this, which are performed for the sake of the Buddha path. So there's another section of the text. It talks about things like giving people refuge with the Buddha, restraining oneself by virtue, how to explain how to guard the sense faculties, meaning how to be mindful, how to meditate, how to practice moderation in eating. There's something very interesting about moderation in eating. In one of the Buddha's instructions to the monks, he says, you eat only to cure hunger and not to introduce new feelings. What are new feelings? New feelings is what happens, say, when you eat too much, or when you concentrate too much on the flavor of the food and you get lost in enjoying your food. Okay, this is for monks. Okay, um, so those are new feelings. But for lay people, overeating and introducing feelings of discomfort from being too full that you can identify with. Uh, so teaching someone how to meditate, how to progress along the path, all this part of sharing the Dharma. And you can see here that some of this is not limited to left-on people, like transferring the five precepts, taking refuge. Yes, that one usually, traditionally, it is only left-on people who are able to do that. But dispelling doubts, discussing, reciting, reading, answering questions, there's a lot of this that lay people can do, right? So that is why in the next slide, uh, we have Shufu's comments on giving of Dharma. Okay, there's a question. JinHe says, I didn't hear it clearly. So you said the monks eat only to cure hunger? Yes, that's why we eat. Frankly, if I didn't feel hungry, I wouldn't really want to eat, because to me, eating is such a waste of time. So yes, we treat food as medicine to just, so we eat just enough to keep the body healthy so that we can practice and to cure hunger. All right. Okay. Giving of Dharma by Shufu. Shufu says the one who requests Dharma, okay, which is all of you who every week gets the opportunity to request, says is representing everyone to request Dharma. So you're not just requesting for yourself. Don't be selfish. The right intent is to request for everyone else. And then Shufu says you must practice. You must first practice requesting the Dharma, then you will be able to teach Dharma in the future. It says because you request someone to teach Dharma, in the future you will know how to teach Dharma yourself. And Shufu says, why are you unwilling to teach Dharma? When I ask, for example, when I ask if anyone has anything to share, and everyone is always 99.9% of the time, everyone is quiet. Okay, so Shufu says, why are you unwilling? Teach here, don't take it literally, like just teach Dharma, expand the principle of what Shufu is saying into sharing Dharma. Okay, whatever you know, whatever experience that you have is considered Dharma. Shufu says, it is because you never requested Dharma in the past. Says, therefore, there is some karmic cause and effect relationship here. Everyone should understand this. So if you look at yourself, if you, okay, don't even go to speaking Dharma yet or sharing the Dharma, just look at what prevents everyone in this group from requesting Dharma. Okay, you have the opportunity to request on behalf of everyone. When you are presented with the opportunity, what goes on through your mind, or what goes through your mind that tells you, let someone else do it, I'm not going to do it. Okay, why am I bringing this up? Because as Shufu says, it's the first step that you take so that in the future you are able to create the conditions so that you can speak Dharma. And why is this important? Well, to be able to speak Dharma, you have to kind of understand Dharma. So wouldn't you want to understand Dharma to the extent that you can share, or at least like maybe not like understand fully, but you don't have the fear of sharing. Yeah, maybe that's a better way of putting it. You don't have the fear of sharing what you know. Okay, so Shufu says something else too. Um, this is a Q&A. Because Shufu's practice would be he would always ask people to speak. So someone's asking Shufu, says, Master, you require that the four assemblies take turns to either give a lecture on the sutras or repeat a past lecture. How should lay people speak so that their talks are in accordance with the Dharma? So what are the four assemblies? The four assemblies are the assemblies of monks, nuns, and then uh, upasikas and upasakas, left from not left from lay people, the men and the women. This makes up the four assemblies. Did I get that right? I think so. Let me investigate. I'll get back to you next week. Um, so Shofu's reply is use the sutras as a basis. Don't just say whatever you please. So what happens is instead of just giving your interpretation, you give your interpretation based on a sutra. And because you share the sutra, then someone else can go back. When they listen to you, they can go back and refer to the sutra itself. And then when they refer to the sutra, they can either come to their own understanding, how you say, uh, they have a way of verifying for themselves, because everyone, based on their level of understanding, will have different interpretations of the sutra. So when you base it on the sutra, you're giving people an opportunity to understand where your understanding comes from. And this is also consistent with the Buddha's instructions. Uh, the Buddha's instructions called the four great references that he gave before he entered Nirvana. This is in the Pali Canon called, what's the sutra? It's not the Nirvana Sutta. It's a very long sutra, and it outlines the Buddha. There's a part that's very poignant because it depicts the last moments of the Buddha, where he lays down between the two sala trees which spontaneously flower as offerings to the Buddha, because he was tired. And then that's during that time he also gave instructions. He said, in the future there are four great references. What are the four? The four is when you hear the Dharma from, he gave four instances of hearing the Dharma, either from a very learned, all the way from a very learned, very esteemed, how you say, a monk who you would have confidence in, basically, and you listen to the Dharma, um, and all the way to a whole assembly of monks who say that who you listen the Dharma from them, and all of them say they have heard this from the Buddha. This is what the Buddha says, and this is what they understand. The Buddha says in all four of these instances, you are neither, you shouldn't accept blindly. Don't just, oh, because this monk gives me confidence, I just accept blindly what this monk says. He said, but the Buddha says neither should you reject as well. So it says whenever you listen, the Buddha's instruction is you go back to the discourse, to the Vinaya, that means to the collections of the Buddha's teachings on the precepts and the sutras, and you compare what you heard with what you just heard with what the Buddha actually said, and then you make your own conclusion from there. So if people actually follow this instruction, then you wouldn't be taken. We have a fear of external sects, sects. Sorry for my pronunciation, where sometimes people are not quite sure about certain teachers or certain groups of Buddhism, and because they don't know the Buddha's actual instructions on how to find the wisdom in knowing if a group or the teachings are correct or not, they either get lost or they just operate out of fear everywhere they go. They tend to stay away from certain people because they themselves are ignorant. So using the Buddha's instructions and Shofu's instructions, by using the sutra as a basis, you are giving people the source of where your knowledge comes from. So you're giving them a chance to find out for themselves. Yeah, you're not asking them to trust you implicitly, because that would be wrong. Unless you are someone who have achieved a certain level of wisdom. Okay, so at this point, I was going to tell a story We have 5 minutes. Let me see. Does anyone have any questions or anything they would like to share? You feel inspired after getting Shufu's instructions? Anyone at all? No? Okay. Um, so what happens when you share the Dharma? Okay. So during the time of the Buddha, King Asoka was hosting some monks for a Dharma talk. So this young monk, who's described as a master of the Tripitaka, meaning he probably had memorized the entire, all the sutras that were spoken by the Buddha, and he's described as very intelligent and very handsome. He sat next to the king because he was the next to speak the Dharma. And then when he sat next to the king realized that the king could smell this very fragrant smell, like this. The smell is described as very exotic. It means that the king never smelled this kind of smell before. Okay, so when he started to speak, the king could smell the smell became stronger. So this made the king really suspicious. Okay, the king was thinking that, oh, is this some kind of trick that this young monk is trying to play on me to get favor, or to, yeah, to show that he's special so that I treat him favorably or something. So after the monk had finished speaking, the king asked the monk, he says, what do you have in your mouth? Open your mouth so I can see into it. So the young monk opened his mouth, and then the king said, where is this smell coming from? I mean, okay, sorry. The king knows the smell is coming from the young monk's mouth. So the king questioned the monk and says, how do you get this smell? Like, are you trying to trick me or anything? And the young man says, oh, he says, in the past, he says, during the time of Kashyapa Buddha, he was also a monk, this young monk. He was a monk then, he's still a monk now. And he says, in the midst of the great assembly, he constantly took pleasure in expounding on the immeasurable qualities of Kashyapa Buddha, the Bhagavan, on the true character of dharmas, and on all the incalculable methods to access the Dharma. So he said during the time of Kashyapa Buddha, as a monk, he really liked praising the Buddha and speaking the Dharma. He says, I conscientiously and earnestly set forth praises and offered instruction to everyone. So this sounds like Samattabhada Buddha's first two vows: worship and respect all Buddhas, and to make praises to the dust come ones. And it says, from that time to the present day, I have always had a marvelous fragrance coming forth from my mouth. This has been the case in life after life without cease. It has constantly been just as it is on this very day. So that's a result of sharing the Dharma. And not just sharing, but you have, um, let me see, where does he say? Uh, took pleasure. It gives you great joy to share what you understand, to help people. So Shufu also said, just share what you know. You don't have to act like you're really smart and try to talk about things that you don't really understand about, because uh, things will start to go wrong really quickly. uh, just share what you know. If you don't know, say you don't know, and just share what you understand from the sutras itself. It, it's very straightforward. Yeah, you don't have to be someone special in order to share Dharma. Okay, so it's 10 o'clock. Next week, we'll wrap up giving by looking at the how bodhisattvas give, because I think it's very inspiring to transition from the Pali canon and the Buddha's instructions to lay people up to how bodhisattvas perform great giving. And hopefully we have some awesome stories to share as well. Okay, let's do dedication of merit, and then we can bow. I'm getting better at this, as in I'm not forgetting to bow anymore. Oh, that's one slide. Okay. Okay, there's a question about what is Pali. Go look it up. Go look up Pali. It's very easy. You can Google what is Pali, and or the Pali Canon to be more precise. And or go look up the website Access to Insight. Let me type it in the chat box. Okay, go look up Access to Insight. All right, I'm going to put my palms together, invite everyone to join me. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, we're going to do 3 bows to the Buddha. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Okay, we'll see everyone next week. Hopefully, next week we have someone, at least one person, to share an interesting story or an interesting sutra or personal experience or even something as straightforward as an understanding of, you thought about what we've shared before, and you wanted you you have some, I wouldn't say insight. Insight is too strong a word, but you have some interesting thoughts that you want to share. Okay, and yeah, we should have joy. We should be able to find joy in sharing our understanding of the Dharma. Okay, so see everyone next week. Oh, sorry, that's a different. That slide is not relevant. Sorry about that. Okay, so we'll see you next week. Amitabha. Bye bye.